So we're about to turn to Daf Chav Beis, Amud Beis. The Gemara asks, "My acher." What does the Mishnah mean when it says "Meshalchim imo acher"? It sounds like we're sending only one person to testify about the credentials and the credibility of these Eidim. So the Gemara says, "V'chad mi mehemin." Can we rely on the testimony of one Eid? V'atani, we learned in a brisa, Masechet. It was a case of Shabbos. And who came to Bezdin to testify? Who? One individual, the Eid of Imo. And there were two Eidim with him to testify that he was reliable. Again, they didn't see the moon, but they recognize, they know this person. You know, they were davening with him in the shtibluch, and they know that he's a reliable guy. But it says Eid of Imo, meaning there are two Eidim. And here in our Mishnah it says Acher. Now you might ask, why was there only one Eid on Kiddush HaChodesh? Maybe it's assuming that we'll find another Eid, but we need two Eidim to testify on this witness that he qualifies for Eidus. Well, what's that called in English? A character, something or other. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's a phrase.
Character witness.
Character witness, okay. There's also another phrase. Anyway, they need two character witnesses. Omar Papa, my Acher, you misunderstood the word Acher. Acher in the Mishnah doesn't mean one person. It's not enough to get one character witness. We need two character witnesses. But it means Zug Acher. It's in the singular because it's a Zug. A Zug is a pair of two Eidim. And Hochinam Mistabra, I'll prove it to you. Dilo Tema, if you don't accept my position, says Rav Papa, that the Lashon Yachid here is referring to the Zug, which means two Eidim, not one, then what are you going to do with the following? It says in Einon Makirin Osa. If we don't have testimony, character testimony, Osa, for him, my Osa. I mean, it can't mean one Eid, Ilema Osa Chad, B'chad mi mehemnon. Can we be Mekadosh L'Chodesh based on the testimony of one single Eid? That's not so, because Kiddush HaChodesh, like Dine Mominus and Dine Nefashos, requires a minimum of two Eidim. So the word also cannot mean him in the singular. Mishpat Ksibbe, with regard to Kiddush HaChodesh, David HaMelech teaches us in Tehillim, in Perek Pei Aleph, Yichok Yisrael Mishpat Elkei Yaakov. And that pasuk is referring to Kiddush HaChodesh. And it says Mishpat, it's called Mishpat. And as far as calling it Mishpat, it has the same status as any Mishpat in Dini Mominus, Dini Nefashos, and you require two Eidim. So Kiddush HaChodesh is considered like Mishpat and it requires two Eidim. Elavadai, my Oso, what does the word Oso mean? Oso Azug. It's the two witnesses that saw the Levana and testified. And now we need another Zug of two Eidim to qualify them by testifying on their character. Therefore, my also azug hafinami, my acher zug acher. Now the Gemara wants to discuss what happens if you don't have an Eid kosher to testify on the character of the Eid. Gemara says, "V'chad lo mehemi." Are you telling me that you need two witnesses to testify on the character of the Eidim, that they qualify? But Sanya, what about the story of Noroi? Rabbi Noroi, Maisa Rabbi Noroi, a very famous story. Shalach Eitzel Ha'ed. He saw the Levana and he wanted to testify Lahayda Olav Shabbos. Well, here it says Ha'ed. There was an Eid, a witness who saw the Levana, and now Rabbi Noroi wants to go to Yerushalayim to testify on his character that he's reliable. And it was on Shabbos. And he took the entire trek on Shabbos. And where was the Sanhedrin? They were Be'usha, right? After the Sanhedrin went into Golos from the Lishkas HaGodos in Yerushalayim, they ended up in a place called Usha. And that's where Rabbi Noroi went on Shabbos, not to testify about the moon, but to testify about the Eidim of Kiddush HaChodesh. And there was only one witness. I mean, the Brisa records that it was Rabbi Noroi. So why do you assume that we need two Eidim as character witnesses? Amri, more answers. Rabbi Roy, Sahada Achrina Havi Bade. It was, in fact, what's missing from the Bryce is one little detail, important detail, namely that there was another aide together with Rabbi Roy. You'll ask me, so why did the Bryce only mention Rabbi Roy, which is very misleading? And we came to the mistaken conclusion that one aide could be a character witness. For instance, Mishum Kvodo Shel Rabbi Roy. This Brisa was protecting the honor of Rabbi Roy. Why? Because in this Maisa of Rabbi Roy, Rabbi Roy, was paskening, he was publicizing his ruling. And that is that you're allowed to be Machal Shabbos even if you don't know anything about the moon, meaning you did not see the moon b'chidusha, but you have character information to offer. And that itself is enough to override the Shabbos. So this story is not just a Maisa Shahaya. This is a story in which we are paskening halacha based on the actions of Rabbi Roy. Rabbi Roy, by traveling on Shabbos, demonstrated publicly that for the sake of testifying about the Eidim, you can override the Shabbos. Now, to mention another Eid who's a regular, ordinary, rank and file person, that would almost be an insult to Rabbi Roy, because Rabbi Roy here is trying to establish the halacha. So that's called, in the Gemara's language, Mishum Kvodo Shel Rabbi Roy. Rav Ashi offers an alternative answer. Omar, Rabbi Roy Sadach Rina Havi Ba'usha. You're right, it was only Rabbi Roy on the way, on the trek to Usha, but there was another witness in Usha, and he was going to link up with that witness, in order to testify a character testimony. The other Rabbi Roy litz Tarufe Bate. Rav Roy was not posketing that one aid as a character witness is sufficient because there was another aid. It's just that he wasn't with Rabbi Roy. That's why he's not mentioned in the Bryce that describes the trek. He was in Usha already. He got there first. So the Gemara says, so what's the big chiddush of Rabbi Roy if there was another aid with him? Although he wasn't with him physically, he was already ahead of him in Usha. I would have said that, look, Rabbi Roy could not be absolutely certain that that witness in Usha would join together with him and testify about these other two Eidim in a character confirmation. He couldn't know for sure. And the Mepharshim say there are two possibilities here. Either that person might decide to drop out, or it could be he's nowhere to be found. He's not home that day. So Rabbi Roy is coming on Shabbos, violating the Shabbos, riding on a donkey in a mita, I don't know what. And lo and behold, they can't locate this other witness. You can't be absolutely sure that he's there. Today maybe it'll be a little easier. We have all sorts of technological ways of, you can take a picture or a video camera, I don't know what. But in those days, who says he's going to be at home? Knock on his door, ring the bell, and no one's home. So Rabbi Roy could not be absolutely certain to rely on the siruv, on the integration with another witness. Kamash Balon, that for the purpose of Kiddush HaChodesh, we have been Chal Shabbos even in his suffix. So look at the chidushim in the Gemara, one on top of the other. First of all, the very fact that for Kiddush HaChodesh we can override the Shabbos. That's chiddush number one. Chiddush number two, it doesn't only mean overriding the Shabbos of Tchumen, of coming a long distance. It could mean Machamer Acham Behemto. Not only that, it could be bringing the Mita and violating Meleches Havaras Dalad Amos Kushas Rabim. And not only that, we're going to be Machal Shabbos for the sake of Kiddush HaChodesh if it's necessary to bring character witnesses. They themselves know nothing about the Levum. And on top to boot, these character witnesses are not sure that they'll have two witnesses. One is alone, knowing that the other one is there, but who says he'll show up? And all this is for the sake of Kiddush HaChodesh. Big chiddush. Ki also Ula came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. Omar, he told the people in Eretz Yisrael, Kidshua liyarcha b'marav. They already were mekadesh the chodesh on a certain day in Eretz Yisrael and Marav. So he was bringing the testimony from Yerushalayim to Bavel that on such and such a day they were mekadesh the chodesh. And now the Gemara really is addressing the following question: is there a reliability on the testimony of one single witness regarding Kiddush HaChodesh? Again, the original Kiddush HaChodesh in action, that had to be done by two witnesses. But do we need two witnesses to testify that Bezdin was Mekadesh HaChodesh on that day? Ula seems to have come alone. Amar of Kahana Lomi boy Ula de Gava Rabba who de Mehemin El Afilu Inish the Alma Namim. Don't mistakenly come to the conclusion that because Ula is the Gadol Adar, that's why they relied on his testimony. No, even if a very ordinary rank and file Jewish citizen, a member of the Jewish community, comes to testify in Bavel that on such and such a day they were Mekadesh L'Chodesh and so we rely on him. The story happened to be that it was Ula, but it's not because of Lamai Taima. Why is it that you rely for Kiddush HaChodesh, which is called Mishpat? Remember that we classified Kiddush HaChodesh under the din of Al Mishnayim Eidim Yokum Tovar, like any Horas, Bezdin, and Dini Mominus, and Dini Nefashos, Mishpat Ksibbe. So why are we relying on one witness? And the answer is called Milsa Davide Ligluya Lo Meshakar Ve'inch. Remember, Abosai, that we spoke in the previous Mishnah about testimony that might not be kosher, meaning, technically speaking, we have a problem, which is called a psulat guf. And there could be a level of ne'emanus. So as far as testifying that the moon was seen, for that we need full-fledged edus, and that's called mishpat. But once the mishpat was already established, we just don't know about it, then we could rely on one witness, because here it's already what we call ne'emanus. Ne'emanus means credibility, and even one single witness has credibility. So he can testify that on such a day, Bezdin was Mekadesh the Chodesh. But the Gemara is not satisfied with it. Meaning, there's a principle called Eid Echad Neme B'Surim. We do rely, when we need Ne'emanus, on the testimony of one witness. Otherwise, you and I would not be able to eat dinner in our wife's home, because who says that the food is kosher? You're relying on one witness. Not only that, but when a shochet shechts an animal, how do you know that the shechita was a good shechita, reliable? You rely on one witness. The shochet did it, no one else was there to testify. So in Isurim, we rely on the testimony of one aid. And the Mefarshim here are asking the following question: why does Gemara introduce a whole new logical principle in the laws of Ne'emanus to teach us and justify that we can rely on the testimony of one witness? And that's called Milsa Davidi Ligluye Lo Meshakri Inchi. A person would never lie about something that he knows they're going to find out about it one way or the other. They're going to catch him in his lie. We're going to have many opportunities to determine whether or not Bezdin actually was Mekadesh Chodesh on that day. So why would he fabricate the truth? But the Mefarshim are not happy with that. Forget about this new principle of Milsa Davidi Ligluye. We should believe it because of the principle of Eid Echad Neman B'Surim. So you have a piece of meat and you don't know if it's kosher or not, you rely on the testimony of one aid. Now it's possible that once we had this element in the equation of Kilkal Akusim, the Rabbanan made takanos. And perhaps they would only rely on the Shliach Bezdin. You remember they sent out Shluchim to notify the people in the far-flung places that the Chodesh was Mekudesh, that Bezdin was Mekovea. And these Shluchim were reliable Shluchim. So if a Shliach comes and says, you can trust me, that Bezdin was Makadosh Chodesh on such a day, then we will trust it. But an ordinary rank and file citizen, how do we know? Maybe he's a Baitusi Chas v'Shalom. And therefore, we have to introduce another element in the equation, a rule which is called Miltzat Avidi Likluya. That's something that will be clarified. One way or the other, person doesn't lie about that. He doesn't want to get caught, so to speak, with his pants down, that he lied in front of Bezdin. Tanya Nami Hachi, and we learned like this in a Brisa, Ba Echad B'Sof, he came from the end of the world, he came from the Far East, and Bezdin doesn't know him. Who is he? He's got slanted eyes. I don't know. Is he Jewish? Is he not Jewish? So if we believe he's Jewish, again, the Gemara Yevamos is going to discuss how we know he's Jewish, is then the Omer, he says, Kidshu Bezdin is a Chodesh, on such a day, Bezdin was Makadosh the Chodesh, Nemon, and we rely on him. So it's not Ula as a unique exception to the rule that we relied on, but any rank and file citizen, even if we don't know how great of a scholar he is, or how, because it's a Milsa Davidi Likli. The Mishnah says, anyone was accepted until the Kilkalu by Tusa. And they made a takana that they required Hakara, which means character witnesses to testify that we can rely on these witnesses. Now, the Gemara wants to quote a Brisa to explain what the Baitusim were trying to accomplish. What were they trying to undermine? And one of the big bones of contention between the Baitusim and the Prussian were the traditional Jews that relied on the Mesorah, was the issue of the pasuk Mimachras HaShabbos. The Torah says to bring the Omer Mimachras HaShabbos. And we have a Kabbalah, and the Prussian passed this down, Ish Mipi Ish from Moshe Rabbeinu, that the words Mimachras HaShabbos means the day after the first day of Pesach, which is the 16th of Nisan. And the Baitusim and all those Karoim, all those guys that only believed in Tarsh B'Tzav, they rejected this Mesorah. They said no. Mimachras HaShabbos means on a Sunday, and that's the only day of the week that qualifies for the Omer. They wanted to be to cause the Chachamim to mistakenly be kover Rosh Chodesh Nisan on Shabbos, and then they were hoping in their agenda that the people would laugh at the Chachamim because they would see that they're bringing the Omer on the day after Shabbos. Why? Because if you add 2 weeks from Rosh Chodesh on Shabbos, you'll get to Shabbos. And then the next day, which is the 16th of Nisan, that day is a Sunday. And if they do that, if they can convince somehow through perjury, through lying, that Bezdin will be Makadosh the Chodesh on a Shabbos, then that would be a fulfillment of their opinion, and they would boast that, even the Chacham, the Pruchim, agree with them that Mimachas HaShabbos means on a Sunday. Sachru Shnei B'nei Adam Bar Meo Zuzi. Could you imagine? They gave 200 zuz to each of 2 witnesses to perjure themselves. They paid them off. Mafioso style, make you an offer you can't refuse. Echad Mishalanu, the Echad Mishalahem. They weren't going to be relying on the fact that both of these Eidim would be by Tusim, because then maybe the cat would get out of the bag. So what they did is they hired one of their own by Tusim. That was not a problem. And they hired one of the, so to speak, reliable Jews. And they paid him 200 zuz. That's an awesome sum of money. The Pnei Yoshua, by the way, writes, as far as Ksuba is concerned, the 200 zuz is the equivalent to what it takes to support a family for a full year. And now in our society, I don't know, what would that be? $50,000, $100,000, I don't know how much. It's getting really, with inflation, getting really expensive. What happens? These 2 witnesses, each one who got paid off 200 zuz, show up in an instant, and Mishalahem Heyedei Duso V'yotz. That one who had an affiliation with the Baitusim, he was very happy, he gave this false testimony, pocketed the 200 zuz, and he flew away, flew to Kuba. Mishalanu, what about the Jew, Nebuch, who had accepted his bribe? Things don't look too good. Now it's his turn to testify about the new moon on Shabbos. Amrulo, and Mar Kate said Ra'isa Salavan. This was the first interrogation we're going to see later on, not today, about all the questions that they used to interrogate the Edom who came to testify the Chiddush Halavana. And the first testimony, the first question was always, Keitzad Ra'isa Es Halavana. Now, this Jew was quite a scholar, and he's going to show off to the Bezdin. He's going to use the Nusach, the official formula that was accepted by the Mishnah, namely, Amalehem Ola Hayisi B'Malei Adumim. Everybody knows where Malei Adumim is? When I got engaged to my wife, Charney, we were only engaged, and I took her in to see Rav Soloveitchik. And we were planning to spend some time in Malei Adumim. I got a job as a Ram in the Hesed Chief in Malei Adumim. So as soon as I said Malei Adumim, the Rav says to me, bring me a Gemara Rosh Hashana. And he opens up to this Daf Chav Beis to show me where Malei Adumim is in the Gemara. I'll never forget it. Ola Ayisi Malei Adumim, Vira Isiv, and I saw the moon, Shu Ravutz Bein Shnei Sloim, I could see it between two boulders, two mountains, Rosho Domali Egel, Oznav Domali Gdi, Karnav Domos Lutzvi, Uznova Munachas Lobekir Echosav, Mitzatzti Bo, Vinertati, Vinafalti Lechore. He gives a whole dramatic explanation or description of what he saw. And Bezdin sensed that something fishy is going on here. This man is trying to send us a secret message. This is not the way an aide would answer the question with all this drama. Not only that, he says, I fell back, I fell over. Well, if you fell over, did you see the Levana after you fell over? Now he whispers to them, you don't believe me. I got 200 zuz wrapped up in my beged. And who gave me the Messiah Zuz? Apparently, you're trying to convey a secret message to us. The whole thing is gebluff. He whispers, Shamati shebikshu by tusim lahatos esachacham. I got wind of the fact that this was a plot, a scheme of the Baitusim, to cause the Chachamim to accept the fabrication of Edus and be Makadish the Chodesh on Shabbos. Marti, I decided, Elichani, better that I go, except Ki'ilu 200 zuz, make believe as if I'm on your side. In other words, you paid me off, I'll do exactly what you want. And I said, I'm going to tell you about this fabrication of the truth, this legend. Shema Yovo B'nei Adam She'ena Magunin V'yitu said, if I wouldn't volunteer to go, then they may find a Jew who never would be so tempted by this 200 zuz bribe that he will actually fabricate the truth. Amrulo, the Dayanim was so impressed with this Jew. They said, Masayim Nesunim L'chamat Panu. You know what? The 200 zuz that you got from the Baitusim, may they rot. You pocket them. What do you mean? It's a gift from Bezdin. Imotach Basocherchan, and that Baitusi who hired you, if we get a hold of him, Imotach ala Omud. We're going to tie him to a pole because the Mishnah says in Set the Makis that when somebody gets lashes, they tie him down to a pole. They realize that the Baitusim are making inroads here, and it was that close, to succeeding in achieving their goal to be matir. So they made a takana: we will not accept testimony unless we have character witness. The Mishnah says, Barishona, before the Kutim got involved, what they would do is they would light torches on the top of mountaintops from one mountain to another mountain and another mountain to another mountain in order to send the word out that we were already Makadish the Chodesh. But Mishakilkul Akusim, after the Kusim got involved, Hiskinushi Shluchim Yotzim, we're not going to rely on the fires, as the Gemara is going to explain why, but rather we'll only rely on the Shluchim that will send out as messages to notify the people about the Kiddush HaKodesh. In the original takana, how did they achieve their goal of communicating and passing on the word until it got to Bava that they were Makadish the Chodesh? What was the nature of these bonfires? How did it operate? Leviim klonosos are long sticks. In Hebrew, it's called motos, shel erez, and they were made of a cedar tree. We're going to have a whole long sugya tomorrow, Mitzvah, about what this cedar tree looked like. Aruchim, they were very long. And on the top of these kanim that they held, there were reeds that came out, and on the reeds, they put atzei shemen, una oris al pishtan, the very flammable kind of, they call it the psolis of flax. The korech, and they wrapped around the kanim and the atzei shemen, this pishtan b'meshicha, and they had a kind of a rope. V'ol Rosh Hahar, they would climb up a mountain, matzis b'emes ha'or, they would light the fire, umolech umevi, and they would, with the stick that they held, they would bring it back and forth, mala, morid, up and down, ad shehu roes chaver shosekain bahar hasheni, until he saw that his colleague on the next mountain over, which was a distance, we'll see exactly what the distance was between one mountain and the other, until he would light his fire. And this went on. The second one would wait until the guy in the third mountain saw that. What were the names of these various mountains? Each mountain had its own name. Mehara Mishcha, Lisar Tovta, and Lisar Tovta, the Grofina, from Grofina, Lechavron, Lebeis Biltin, Beis Biltin, Lo Zazu Misham. Okay, Beis Biltin was the furthest mountain on the border, and when it got to that mountain, which was called Beis Biltin, there was a place in Babel called Pupindisa, and that's where the Jews eventually migrated in Bavel after the destruction of some other parts of Bavel, which are called Surah. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Anyway, after Surah went down, the Jews migrated to Pumbedisa. That was the largest Jewish settlement in Bavel. And they were able to light the fire on that mountain, which was at the boundary of Israel, which is called Beis Biltin, such that as far as Pumbedisa, they could see that fire. And then all the Jews in Pumbedisa would climb up to their roofs, each one, and light a fire. It looked like the entire city of Pumbedisa was on fire. It was like July 4th. It was like the fireworks. The Gemara says, "My mashma de masiyan lishna de yikodho." How do we know the word masiyan, as used in this Mishnah, means to light a fire? And the Gemara quotes a pasuk which obeys. Vayisa'im David v'anosh. Vayisa'im means, according to Targum Onkelos or Targum Yonasan, it means via okedimin David. Okedimin means he lit a fire. So we see the word Vayisa'im means he lit something aflame. Tanur Rabbanan ein masiyan masos elo al chodesh shenira bismano lekadsha. According to this opinion, the Tanakam this Brisa, there was only a need to do this in Payim Masiyah Masos to notify the people in the Gola that they were Makadish the Chodesh on day 30, which means the previous month was Chas, it was only 29 days. And presumably, if it was day 31, then even without the Masos, by default, the people would understand that the previous month was 30 days, and the 31st day is Rosh Chodesh. V'yemasai Masiyin li'ar iburo. Li'ar iburo means the evening going into Ibur. Ibur means day 31. So the evening going into day 31, that's when they were lighting the masos. And the Gemara says, L'meimra, should we assume that the Bryce is telling me that Achosar Avdina Amole Lo Avdina, that only in a case where they were Kovei the Chodesh on the 30th day, and the previous month was 29 days, then they were Masi and Masos. But if the previous month was a 30-day month, and they were Makadish the Chodesh on day 31, there was no procedure of Masos to notify the people that day 31 was Rosh Chodesh, my time. What's the reason for this? And the Achronim here go to town. What do you mean, what's the reason for this? The reason is obvious, because on day 31, it's got to be Rosh Chodesh. It can't be day 32. It's either the previous month is 29 or 30. So what's Gemara asking my timer? Tomo Achronim al Kushas HaGemara. But Daibakach Shemasiyan al Chodesh Shenischadish Mizmano on the 30th day. Lama Lanu Latriach Bezdin Lachinam, if it's already the 31st day, I mean, the whole exercise is futile, it's unnecessary. The Tiritz HaTurievim, Mipnei Chomer HaMoados, Me'achet Shehem Mitsurim Lakol, Dainu Afliam Me'aretz B'Noshim, we have to notify every last Jew, Vayitzarech Lo Dia, Hein Al Mole Ve'Hein Al Chaser, V'Lo Lismoch Al Avanosim. They wouldn't rely on what has to be the most logical and simple conclusion, namely that the Kiddush HaChodesh took place on day 31. Omer Ebi Zera. So why is it that on day 31 they would not set up the masos to notify the people? Zera mishum Rosh Chodesh chaser. Let's say that Rosh Chodesh is on day 30, meaning the previous month is only 29 days. Shechal lios bi erev Shabbos, and the 30th day of the previous month, which is Rosh Chodesh now, is on a Friday, which means that the night of 31 is Shabbos, which means they can't do the Masi and Masos in that situation. Emas Avde. When are they going to do the Masos? Be'afuke Shabbos. It seems like by process of elimination, there's no other choice, but they have to wait till Motzi Shabbos. And therefore, the I'amrit Navid Nami Amole, if you're going to institute Masi and Masos, even in the case of day 31, Asu, now we're on Daf Chav Gimel, Asu Midday, the Bnei Agola may come to mistakenly think, when they see the Masos on Motzi Shabbos, they'll say, Hi Chaseru. Maybe it was the previous month that was Chaser, it was 29 days, which is true. I mean, right now they're on the good side of the fence. And why didn't they send the Masos right after the Kiddush HaChodesh on the night going into the 31st? That's because it's impossible at Shabbos. Oh, Dilma, but they may come up with another theory, and that is Molihu, that really the previous month is a Moli of 30 days, and Rosh Chodesh really was on Shabbos. That was day 31. Ubismano Avdu, which means it liku as a masos b'layla she'achri Rosh Chodesh. In other words, Rosh Chodesh was really on Shabbos, and the masos that they're seeing is the night going into, so to speak, day 32, meaning day 31 with Shabbos, and that was Rosh Chodesh. So we're really in a difficult situation, in a bind, because if they would be Masih and Masos on 31, then in a case where Rosh Chodesh of day 30 is on a Friday, and now they're going to do the Masih and Masos, they have no choice but on Motzei Shabbos, people are going to think that really the previous month was a Mole, and that Shabbos was the day on which they were Makadosh the Chodesh, which is really not true. They were Makadosh the Chodesh on Friday. So we cannot allow for Masos on a Mole, on a month that has 31 days, because if that would be the case, we'd get messed up in the scenario in which they were Makadosh the Chodesh day 30 on a Friday. Okay, then, so this is where we'll stop here on the top of Chaf Gimel Omid Aleph. Okay, then, so let me wish you a wonderful day, and thank you.